Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm here with you together at Luminihsan's another episode in Sydney, together with two amazing speakers next to me. Inshallah, I will introduce shortly. Today's topic is going to be about the prophetic blueprint. I tried to come up with something provocative, but basically it's about sunnah and seerah, how it affects our life as Muslim women. I'm pretty sure a lot of us are very ambitious. We would like to achieve a lot of things in our lives, but we often miss this link to peace on how to create a harmony when we're trying to be beneficial to our family, to ourselves, and also to our ummah. And today, inshallah, with expertise with these two amazing women from different backgrounds, we will be able to dive in. Assalamu alaikum, sisters. Let me give a short introduction because we will have a very different audience apart from the one that is present today here. Thank you so much, ladies. So I'm honored to welcome Ramia Abdo Sultan, Australian-Palestinian wife, mother, and distinguished lawyer. She co-runs Lowbridge Lawyers and holds Masters of Islamic Studies with distinction from Charles Sturt University. Beyond her legal work, she serves as a community relations advisor to the Australian National Imams Council and sits on the boards of the Gaza Children's Foundation, Charity Rights Australia, and the Australia-Palestine Advocacy Network. But what makes her very special and truly inspiring as well, that she gives halaqas to sisters in Australia. Assalamu alaikum, Ramia, once again. And we also have Julide Turker with us today. She's a functional medicine practitioner specialized in pediatric naturopathy, nutrition, and holistic healing for over 13 years now. She holds Masters in Food Science from University of Melbourne and has dedicated her work to helping people overcome food struggles, addictions, and health imbalances by integrating Islamic principles and prophetic medicine into their lifestyle. She's also the author of 1/3 of Your Stomach, a book that explores the deep connection between food, lifestyle, and spirituality, showing how the Sunnah provides a practical blueprint for well-being. Assalamu alaikum, Julide.
Alaikum salam. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. I mean, this is crazy. Like, I arrived yesterday night, morning, sorry. It was night in Indonesia. But yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm really happy to connect with you and, have this opportunity to connect with Australian sisters and learn from you, what is happening in this part of the world with the Muslim sisters, with the ummah, with the ambitions and the, amazing things that you're doing. How are you today?
Alhamdulillah. No, thanks for the opportunity. And it's always, inspiring to see other women come together. There's a different energy always when there are women discussing ambitions and vision. And I look forward to the conversation, inshallah.
Likewise, yeah. Julide, and you arrived just this morning. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm so excited to be sitting with Ramia, who I happened to meet half an hour ago, and yourself, other than our social media interaction. So thank you so much for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure and
it's
an honor.
It's a pleasure. I mean, ever since I got to know about both of you, I've been following you on social media and looking and just what you're doing. It's so inspirational. So it's going to be a lot of learning for me today as well, inshallah.
Sure.
Yeah. Both of you are coming from different fields of work. We all have a common thread, which is helping others, right? But before we help others, especially when it's related to advocacy, to, people that pass some kind of a domestic violence, let's say, or food struggles related to deep traumas from the childhood, these are very difficult topics. And to talk to people about this and, basically break it down and find a solution for them and create the best way for them to heal is not easy. Whether it is through advocacy and the justice or through specific guideline on how to improve their lifestyle. How do you keep sanity while you're dealing with this kind of difficulties? And I'd like to start with Ramia.
First and foremost, I think grounding yourself in your, we are blessed and privileged, alhamdulillah, to have a Muslim identity, and we, we have something to fall back on in terms of learnings from our seerah, the struggles and the challenges that Prophet ﷺ went through himself, and, gems from the Quran as to how it is that you are expected to navigate through this very difficult terrain called dunya. It's never meant to be a perfect, journey. But I think for me, the most important thing, apart from obviously grounding yourself, I'm talking spiritually, nurturing that ruh within time and time again. And I think what the line of work that I do, I think people have this assumption is that you can only be career driven, and that's a misconception that most Muslim Muslims have, but particularly Muslim women, in that you can either be a spiritual person or a career-driven person. And not that I'm trying to be the trailblazer, I'm one of thousands of amazing, inspiring women teaching many others that actually you can be both. Yeah. You can be career-driven, ambitious, do the very things that you've always sought out to do, but also be spiritually grounded. And I know in the circles that I sit, particularly when I'm in a halaqah circle and I sort of disclose, yes, I am a lawyer, there's this sort of shock that comes. How could you be a lawyer and be doing halaqat? And the other way around, if I'm in my office giving that advice, particularly to Muslim clients, because they're the primary clientele that I tend to see, the question, when I do bring in Islam, whether it's providing comfort to that sister sitting before you going through some very difficult time, and I say to her, you have Allah, turn to Allah, but at the same time, pursue justice. There's a bit of a shock. So grounding yourself is critical, but also in my line of work, having that village is by far the most important thing. And village, I mean, powerful, inspiring women who are going to support you no matter what, who are going to be your sounding board when you need it. When you need to debrief each and every day, you have those women around you. And that could be someone as close as, your mother. It could be your aunts. It could be very good friends and, colleagues. So having that village is critical. And I don't think I'd be able to get through my line of work without the two, subhanAllah. The grounding, the spiritual grounding, but also village and good companionship.
MashaAllah. Julide?
I love that. Ramia said it so beautifully. And isn't Islam a deen of moderation? So I think even in my line of work, when it comes to food as therapy, it's about acknowledging that you can't really be a spiritually committed person if your body is not aligned. And then I see a lot of people who are very invested in their physical health. They'll exercise, they'll eat organic, they'll supplement, but the spirit is void of contentment. And I think in my line of work, number one is practicing what I preach, but also having compassion for myself, because you just mentioned before too, Guzelya, that you were like, we have a lot of childhood trauma, true. And also we can't always implement what we learn. Although, in the time of the Sahaba, or the Prophet, peace be upon him, someone came across a Sahaba and said, you look very grieved, what's going on? And he said, we take a piece of information or a piece of advice from Rasulullah, peace be upon him, and we're not able to see him again until we implement that piece of advice. And I think in our world, we are absolutely drowning in information and we've lost the connection to ourselves where, I have people asking me questions on social media with due respect, but there's no logic. There's no, people have disconnected from their gut intuition. They've disconnected from their ability to make a logical, sound decision themselves. And that disconnect has led to you believing what people say just because they say it. And there's no real foundational, I understand this. Whereas Islam, the first verse revealed was Iqra. And Islam constantly in the Quran, when you read it, the encouragement is towards the understanding, right? Almost after every ayah, this is for the person who reflects. Do you not have understanding? Do you not have common sense? And so there's so many examples in the Quran in relation to the importance of that balance. And I think for me, it's practicing what I preach, but also having a level of compassion for myself when I can't. I will speak about, for example, yesterday I posted on my socials, I don't really feed my children refined sugar, but I do sometimes, right? And it was a particular product and the first ingredient was sugar. And as I read it, I felt like, oh my God, what am I doing? But it's that fine line between acknowledging there's a reality of this fast food epidemic. We live in a world where it's almost unpreventable, and then it's kind of like, where do you find that balance? Where do you draw that line between being a human being and being okay to have some level of compassion and awareness, but also some level of, I suppose, stretch in the application of what you believe in. And I think it goes both ways, because it's also being mindful that we need to be okay with, I suppose, listening to people who may not always implement what they preach, because that's the human phenomena. I mean, I might know certain things and some days I implement them very well and other days I'm an absolute failure. And if because of that you don't take advice off me or I don't take advice from you, then who are we to take advice off? Because who doesn't have flaws and who doesn't make mistakes? And therein Islam draws that sense of compassion and mercy, and like, it's okay, you know, as long as you're spiritually aligned, you're trying to get physically aligned. And, you know, the compass is the Quran and the light is the lifestyle of Rasulullah. And that's exactly what I try to implement. Like, it's not, people think when you say prophetic medicine, how many dates are you eating and how much pomegranate you should eat. It's more about understanding the logic of how food evolves from a perspective of winter, autumn, spring, summer, autumn, winter. It's more about understanding it shouldn't be packaged. It should be wholesome. What's the concept of tayyib in the Quran? But people only take black seed oil when they're diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
You know, people only seek the approach when it's a treatment as opposed to a prevention. But when you look at prophetic medicine, 2/3 of the hadith, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is all relative to how do you prevent the disease of the body, which carries the spirit, which needs to be in a relatively immaculate condition in order to be logical and inquisitive and, grounded and whatnot.
Can I just build
Of
on
course,
something?
yeah.
Going back to your this era that we live in, where there's a overflow of information,
Absolutely.
And misinformation. To add to
Absolutely.
that,
Absolutely.
I think one of the issues that, I mean, from what I see, also there's lack of genuine mentorship, and this is why we lose ourselves at times. So people want quick fixes. So, you know, I'm having these issues. Let me just hop onto social media, ask the question, and I have every, you know, Tom, Dick and Harry respond with a remedy or a resolution of some sort. Or I will only ask the professional because I'm needing that immediate intervention. There's no consistency, there's no frequency and so forth. And I think this is where we have lost our way. I'm not just talking obviously as women, but even as an ummah at times. Yes, obviously the prophetic way is our ultimate guidance, but we also need to tap back into our traditional methods of seeking that guidance through mentorship, through circles, through face-to-face interactions. Social media has destroyed that element of, simple learning. You know, you're on social media suddenly, you read something, you are an expert in that because you may possess
It's so true.
certain information and knowledge. So mentorship, I think, has been critical. And unfortunately, I think also the post-COVID era has killed that face-to-face interaction. But,
absolutely.
you know, this is why we are seeing a rise, I guess, in mental health disorders, isolation, depression, suicide, and so forth, in that we are isolated, ultimately. And Islam is exactly opposite to that. There's that communal aspect.
Absolutely.
So going back to grounding ourselves and so forth, community, especially in light of what we are witnessing globally, whether it's in Gaza, whether it's the oil, anywhere around the world, I think being isolated has further, it's exacerbated the pain because we don't know how to be, to heal, I guess, through community. But I think it has brought us together. Yeah. So, you've seen, I know in Sydney in Australia, I can talk, I'm sure in Melbourne as well, post 7th of October, there are weekly events, if not every second day. There are, community-based events, forum, rallies. Let's just get together and have coffee over this conversation. And I think it's important. Very important. Community is an element that we really need to go back in terms of finding strength and healing as well.
And it's the compassion where we get the safety, though.
Yes.
Yeah. Because people, I find in our community especially, don't like the community because there's too much judgment. What are you going to say about me wearing this particular outfit? Yeah. I've had people who thought that, I have friends until today that would say, here's my beetroot dip. Do you want to have a look at the ingredients before I serve it to your children? And I don't take offense of that because that is just a reflection of how you feel about yourself. I'm not going to judge you for what you're, especially if that is what is an element for you from a financial perspective. I don't expect you to know certain things that I might know because that's my area. I don't know what Ramia knows about law. It's a completely foreign area for me. And I don't expect her to judge me when I ask her questions that might come on as quite common sense. But what I've found in the community has been the withdrawal because of the judgment. Like, what will they say to what I'm wearing, how I'm speaking, how I do this? And I think that's a sad predicament. And that's where the compassion comes in. And you kind of go, even with our children, I think we've lost our way because we've lost our Islamic caliber. Yeah. We are, with due respect to everybody here, we end up following a lot of Western methodology in raising our children, for example, when it's already in our backyard, right? And what that literally means is, I was speaking to my chiropractor the other day, and she's atheist, and we have a lot of discussion. I have a lot of discussion with her relative to life and whatnot. And she said to me, you know, we were talking about how do you allow for a child to morally withhold and be grounded in certain areas versus, you know, some of our children are just in la la land. You know, we have our 8-year-olds watching dogs that fly, and that is literally oppression for that child, because in our Islamic tradition, by the age of 7 and 8, the child needs to have, because the prefrontal cortex is developed enough to have some level of grounding and understanding, that is when there is a sense of haya in their clothing. We don't say it's ayib, it's not rude to be dressed a particular way, but there is modesty even in how a 7-year-old child dresses. And we take away that and we insult them by putting clothes on them that we think is perhaps cute, but takes away from the dignity that Allah has blessed us with.
The fitrah.
Absolutely. And that's why the child can feel shy wearing particular things whilst we laugh or cheer that particular thing on. And look, the same goes with food, right? Like I have a lot of parents that say, but you know, I feel so bad, I can't give my child that particular lolly. And you look at the ingredients, and there's like 15 ingredients, 10 of them are carcinogens, according to the World Health Organization, let's say. And you feel bad because every other sheep is giving their child this particular lolly. And you should feel bad for every other child who's consuming. Like, why are we're living in such an upside down world? And you don't have to be a naturopath to know that if you flip over something and there's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, 471, 672, 322, like if you don't understand that, put it away.
I think you know what we will be talking about next time? A collaboration between a naturopath and a lawyer to fight those lobbies that are keep on pushing this kind of unhealthy products that actually could be banned even by FDA. Like sometimes, you know, Europe, I'm from Europe, so I kind of more respectful towards how they regulate this thing,
they're
you know?
a little bit better than us, I must say. European standards are a little bit better than ours. And I think that, unfortunately, see what Ramia was saying, when I can be a lawyer, but I can also run a halakha. We have our own strengths, but we're so bogged down without a tribe in raising children, trying to make financial ends meet because we have mortgages and loans and whatever, that we can't even gift the world our gifts. And that is the predicament. You know, you can't even shine in your own light because you're too busy trying to make ends meet because you've got to, and again, everything is so unsustainable when it's not Islamically aligned.
So true.
And that's just the reality. Like, we work our butts off, and Guzelya, Tom, Dick and Harry, working our butts off, told us before the session, do not use Australian slang. And here we are, right? We tried really hard. It's happened once, but
it's wonderful. I can fully understand the speech. Go ahead,
please.
I was just like thinking earlier, Ramia, you mentioned regarding the mentorship. I think this is so aligned. Like, you know, we are so much immersed in today's dunya and the guidance that we're receiving from people that are not necessarily aligned with our values and the lifestyle, where we forget the blueprint.
Because we don't know the blueprint. No one's
taught us. Exactly.
We've been raised with cultural dogma. Like the culture, the culture of the part of the world we come from, my parents come from a Turkish heritage, has literally overburdened any Islamic value.
And not only Turkish culture, all the cultures, right? I'm right now living in Indonesia, you know? I'm sometimes questioning, is it Islam? Because some of the things are coming from traditional background, because when I go to an Islamic event, they do specific things and I don't know what it is. And that's where I have to question, you know, by the way, is it an Islamic, is it my knowledge in terms of Islam that's lacking? Or my knowledge of understanding the Indonesian culture?
Absolutely.
Sometimes there are beautiful things. Sometimes there are things that sometimes like actually contradict. And I want to go back to this like guidance, right, where we seek the knowledge. I think it's amazing what you're doing, Ramia. Like you do this halaqah sessions, mashallah. And I think this is the best way to keep your knowledge fresh, especially you got a degree in Islamic studies. So what I noticed, we have lack of ustazas out there, women, right? Because we like listening to those with whom we associate with. Because obviously there's so many ustazas out there, male figures that are amazing. and I love going to their lectures all over the world. Like I literally follow, and many women are. But still, when it comes to specific things that only a woman can understand, we need more of mentorship. We need more of ustazas, you know. And I know that you're onboarding on this road as well. Like I know that there will be Ramadan videos that are coming out, the reminders with you as well, or with an Islamic lens. So I just want to ask you, what do you think is an actual gap, and how would you try to overcome this gap and create a bridge, and how you think each of the women out there could do it?
Yeah. So just, I mean, very briefly, to make it very clear, and some of those who are here today have attended the halaqat that we run, people have this sort of stigma that a halaqa is exclusively just a spiritual, base. You're just sitting there learning Quran, sunnah, and so forth. And that's critical. I mean, it makes up and comprises the bulk of the conversation. But in actual fact, and because there is an element of contemporary issues that impact on our lives, 90% of the conversation is, yes, Quran, but we are also incorporating into it how that impacts directly on my personal life on the ground. How can I implement things differently and so forth? So we're talking about very real and raw issues every single day, whether it's a halaqah that I run for mums with bubs, parenting and the struggles of I'm not a parenting expert, but I go back to the sunnah and I look at, what's involved, whether it is Islamophobia. Islamophobia, I mean, we're going to probably talk about it. It's not a new phenomenon. It's not a new concept. It's been around since 1400 years ago. We have the tools and the methodology as to how it is that we deal with it. So what's important, I think, for us is to go back through that tarbiyah training, which we have lacked. And this is what the halaqat are centered around in that. And you're not going to get that behind a screen, unfortunately. Zoom and online lessons are amazing. You are able to reach people that you have never been able to reach. But I always say, and subhanAllah, I began streaming my halaqat, apart from the fact that I got banned from live streaming on my socials post 7th of October.
SubhanAllah.
Interestingly. But I did make a conscious decision to stop streaming them because I wanted women to be there and be present. Because what happens is most of us, as women, we come to a space thinking I am carrying all the burdens in the world and nobody else is going through what I'm going through. And then you sit face to face with another sister who may disclose some of the challenges and struggles that she's going through. And this sister, and you walk home with an element of gratitude. You walk home, you go back home going, you know what, alhamdulillah, my struggle is nothing compared to this sister. So tarbiyah is not just sitting behind a screen, clocking off lessons, a course, getting that diploma at the end. Tarbiyah is sitting in an actual circle and seeing how to engage in conversation,
being present,
how to, interact with a teacher, how to interact with the student and so forth. And this is what it's all about. So mentorship also is not just, you're not going to find the perfect mentor that possesses absolutely everything that you require. You need a health mentor. You need a spiritual mentor. You need a professional mentor. And I think this is the thing that we lack, in that we are often seeking that, one in all mentorship. It's not going to happen. You're not going to have that perfect mentor. You may need a mentor depending on the circumstances in your life. For example, if I'm a uni student, single, as opposed to when I'm suddenly married, how do I, get direction around marriage issues and so forth? Who do I tap into? Who can I trust and whatnot? So inshallah, the objective is, to transmit, even if it is an ayah as per the prophetic hadith. Even if and I make a very clear disclaimer, I'm not a scholar. And if I am ever, confronted with a very complex question around fiqh, fatwa, so forth, I direct it and send it off to the relevant experts. But I am a da'iyah. I am someone who can give da'wah. I have, information that I possess. Sometimes it's as simple as I go to a lecture by a renowned scholar of some sort who's visiting us. I take notes. I'm a very good transcriber, by the way. I write notes very quickly. I don't type quickly, but I write notes very quickly. And then I transmit that in the circles that I have and expand on it. And that is what a halaqah is.
I can relate.
Yeah, so you don't need to be an expert. You set your disclaimers and your boundaries, but at the same time, as women, if we don't carry that role, we can't wait for guest speakers to come from abroad and to teach us what Islam is telling us. And we cannot learn it behind the screen. So we have an obligation to transmit that face to face.
MashaAllah. So basically tarbiyah and this ability to be in a life circle, basically present, right, and create a suhbah, the companionship. Because whatever you want to achieve in your life, you need the right circle for that.
Absolutely.
And we actually did discuss in one of the episodes regarding that, like how it is hard to find belonging and create this right circle of friends. Because me personally, being in France, majority of my friends were not Muslim, and it was fine, like when I was single. But when it started to come to, like, that's why the marriage is about half of your deen, because there's so much religion involved, because otherwise you cannot survive, right? Even if you have the perfect spouse. So this is the moment when I realized whatever I ask my non-Muslim friends is not necessarily the solution. It might be like a relief or just acknowledgement of whatever is happening there, but I need a solution, and they don't have knowledge, because okay, they can base it on specific, preferences or biases, or but then I need someone who actually knows the religion and can tell me it in an Islamic way. So I totally feel what you were saying. And regarding like Julide, you were mentioning the connection between the body and the soul, the spirituality. This is very, very important. And Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? That's why sunnah is not only about specific little details that he's done that we all know, like, he used to like specific products, but there's actually the wisdom behind why he was drawn to those things, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him so, right? And I would like you to share a little more, give us the guidance, right? Because we're all seeking mentorship here regarding on how to implement the prophetic blueprint when it comes to lifestyle and nutrition. And what is this connection between the body and the soul?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. It's a very complicated question.
I know, and the answer is going to be long. I'm ready.
Do you know what? It's like when I get clients that come to me and they've been to like a Harvard professor, they've got 7,000 pages worth of diagnostic material for me to read. And in the hour that I have with them, they're like, create the cure for me, Julide. Right. I suppose there's a couple of things. I think the first thing first is this. 150 years ago, the scholar was a scientist, an astronomer. The scholar was a doctor. The scholar was a lawyer. The scholar was a philanthropist. The scholar was an everything. At the current point in time, we are barely one thing, which means when I am qualified as a naturopath, I am not very well versed in orthodox medicine, in that I did not study conventional orthodox medicine, right? So if you come to me and say, Julide, what do you think about this drug? My knowledge is going to be limited to reading the leaflet and kind of acknowledging, the missing areas in terms of the science there. And this happens and I think that's difficult, because the situation is this: we go to the different councils that we have in Australia, in Victoria, in our different states, to the Muslim scholars, and we ask them a question in relation to health. And the answer is so orthodox and so linear and lacking any form of holism or any form of being holistic. And that happens because, with due respect, you might have a bachelor in Islamic studies, but you don't understand medicine. You might have a bachelor in Islamic studies, but you're not a lawyer. And as a result, you're giving information about law without actually understanding the concept of law. So I think what I really want to call people to doing is seeking the mentorship, but then also whatever happened to our own gut intuition, whatever happened to our own understanding that in the Quran it says it's been simplified so that you can literally read. Everything is not an analogy and a metaphor. There is a lot we can take away, like reading a food label. You don't have to be really trained in reading a food label. The information is vast, but I think living in this day of reliance has taken away from us our ability to be self-sufficient. And I think I completely agree with what Ramia is saying, and I think we need to find a moderate path, because I've made calls during COVID-19 to very different secular imams and discussed many topics that affect our community, and the response has been the same generic orthodox response. It has no essence of spirit. It has nothing in it. And I think, therefore, it's very hard, because when people come to me, how do I do it? You need to learn. You need to iqra. You need to read. Like, how do I know nutrition? I wish that our schooling system, it was actually obligatory to learn about the Australian government and council and how it works, our legal rights, which we are not taught. I learned when we were in COVID, I read volumes of books on law to actually understand what is my right, because I was there dumbfounded going, this is not a medical intervention I want to pursue. Do I have a right to not pursue it under the Australian law, right? So I think that whilst mentorship is extremely important, we also need to have some level of basic foundational information ourselves. My auntie came up to me the other day and she's like, you know what, Julide? All this organic food, apparently you're getting rigged. And I go, apparently they are false, not you're getting rigged. And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, I heard someone on Instagram and they said that organic food is a hype, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, did you believe that? She's like, of course I did. Like it's someone I trust. I said, all right, logically, why do you believe it's a hype? To convince me. And she's like, I don't know, because the person said it was. And I said, logic tells you if a vegetable contains some insects on it, it couldn't have been sprayed, because the whole point of the insecticide is to remove any life form off that. So if you've got some bugs on some vegetation, inevitably either it's very minimally sprayed or it's not sprayed. Mm. So I suppose the auntie couldn't go back to making common sense and kind of going, I hear what that lady's saying, but wait a minute, how come then this lettuce has so many beetles on it and so many earthworms on it or whatever, or gnats, and this doesn't? Like, why have we taken away from our absolute ability to have an intellectual conversation as opposed to saying, I believe that because Julide said. I tell my own clients, don't believe me because I said it, challenge me. But we live in a people pleaser society where a lot of the time they're afraid of saying, I don't agree with you. And then I have people come to me, I went to that naturopath and I wasn't getting results, so I'm here. And I said, did you tell them? No. You're coming to me because you got no results, but you never raised with that person. Yeah. And perhaps you didn't feel safe, but sometimes it's not your responsibility. It's their own self, right? I can try and make you feel, right, Ramia, as safe as you can, but depending on your, I suppose the baggage that you carry, depending on your childhood trauma, depending on the schemas, you're going to take what I say, the way that you perceive it, depending on your experiences in the 2, 3, 4 decades that you've been alive, right?
But what you were saying, sorry, that challenge in and of itself goes against what we are taught. So as Muslims, we are actually expected to question. Even the Quran, Allah rhetorically constantly questions us.
I agree with you.
They don't have aql, do they not have an intellect?
Absolutely.
So we're in an era of sami'na wa ata'na, listen and obey. And
absolutely.
Our autonomy is being stripped from us.
Absolutely. So, and our connection to our higher self. Yeah. Because there's the aql, the part that you don't see, like, and then there's the intuition, right? That guides you. I'm a massive believer of that. But I also believe that whilst, spiritual void will strip you of that gut instinct, so will physical void. Yes. Mm-hmm. So if you're nutritionally deprived, if you're inflamed, you're in a refined carb diet, you eat packaged foods, you're on 6 coffees a day, it's like, oh, you're describing me this morning, Julide, right? It is very challenging to be grounded and not come from a place of anxiety and a place of your sympathetic nervous system. Yeah. You're really wired. And when you're like that, even there is no objectivity in that approach, because just think of the difference between if your child drops a cup of water and you yell at them because you haven't had sleep for 3 days, you haven't eaten anything proper, you've had no time for yourself, barely went to the bathroom by yourself. And then if the basic human needs were covered and you sustain some level of mental contentment, and your child tips a cup of water and you say, let's come and clean it up together. Yeah. Right? And that is not achieved through burnout. Yeah. But we do have that because we're so stuck between trying to amalgamate what the West expects from us and what Islam expects from us. And the Western expectation is that we pursue a life in accordance with materialistic values, because Ramia and I don't pursue our careers because we just want the money. We take the money. Mm-hmm. Maybe we don't need it. We take it, right?
But it's not about the money, trust me.
Absolutely. And for the type of work we do, sometimes, believe me, I get off that phone and I'm like, Ya Rabbi, should I increase my prices? Like,
too much demand.
No, because it's very heavy on the soul. It's heavy on the intellect, because you're trying to help someone, and there's so many layers to that onion. Nutrition is not just about, I've got eczema, I went to my naturopath, what natural antihistamine or corticosteroid do I need? It's about, is there intestinal problems? Are there food intolerances? Are there nutritional deficiencies? Is there something in the environment that is chemical based that is affecting the level of inflammation, so on and so forth, right? And so it is difficult, but isn't it beautiful that Islam tells you that looking after your children is a form of worship, right? So I think it's time for us to kind of go, even if I don't have an ability to implement my career, or my career is being a mother at home, that is such a sacred job in and of itself that, the hadith says your mother, and then your father, that we need to kind of own that now, man. We got to go, that, you know what, I'm a mum. It's not just about the hours you put in serving like a slave. As a matter of fact, interesting, a lot of Muslims don't even know this. In Islam, there is no obligation for the mother to cook or clean the home. She is not a slave. Her only obligation from an Islamic perspective is to raise her child as properly as possible. Anything she does on top of that, which is why a lot of traditional Middle Eastern cultures still have maids at home to take away the burden of the mum cooking and cleaning and washing, and just being able to be present with their child and just present in the, and I know we don't have that. And I think that's the biggest struggle at the moment for our community, in reaching a level of, okay, I need free time. You say learn nutrition. How, Julide? I've got 3 kids. I have to run a business. I have to cook and clean. Like, how do I learn?
So this is very perfect, like what you mentioned regarding the knowledge, We always want to keep learning about Islam. We need to understand our religion better, right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
What I noticed with Quran, I remember when I was a kid, actually, I read the Russian translation because that's my perfect language, I'd say. So I was reading it, and then obviously there's a lot of repetition. So my dad told me, like, hey, why are you not reading Quran recently? Like, I didn't notice you reading. I'm like, because Allah thinks I'm stupid. Why he keeps on repeating the same thing over and over? And then he started to laugh, and he said, well, when you will become an adult, when you think you're going to be smart, you will realize you're so stupid. And this is so true, subhanAllah. We need constant reminder. That's number one.
Well, that's the biochemistry of the brain. The neural pathways will only form with repetition, which is why your kid always wants to play doctors and do the same thing over and over again, or always watch the same darn cartoon. You've watched it once, you're satiated. But the kid wants to watch that for the 365th time. That's why we have brain scans. We literally send electric currents to particular areas of the brain to create the pathway that we haven't achieved through habits.
And that's how everything works nowadays with social media, with business and marketing. People repeat in a specific number of times so that,
absolutely.
Exactly, so that they can affect our neurons in a specific way.
Absolutely.
But then also, Islamic knowledge is so important when it comes to wisdom. You can have a knowledge and like a logical response to things, right? But wisdom, subhanAllah, like on my personal experience, I think Islam is very closely related to the things that you do, because like justice, these are the core, and like, well-being, these are the core fundamentals of Islam, right? But like business, it was always there. It was just the tools, but then the ethics that you need to do the business with is like, they're super important. So for me, before, I was working with like conventional businesses, and it was never hard to make a decision, because everything needs to be based on the data. Everything needs to be very logical, proven, But ever since I started to work within the Muslim companies, with Muslim people, I have this level of compassion, not only that, but also I have responsibility beyond the rules of business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So subhanAllah, like what I noticed, it gives me peace. So whatever the result is, outcome is, like, I'm okay with that, because I trust there is a wisdom behind it. The expectations when I work with people, right? Especially when we hire a specific professional based on their achievements, qualification, we really expect some kind of high level of, outcome. But when it comes to the way I do business now, I keep my expectations really low, because it's not me who will judge them at the end of the day, because they might have a even deeper wisdom behind the decisions they will make. And also generally dealing with people, because subhanAllah, like, I think like one of the things that we have at Luminihsan as a value is compassion, right? So, and integrity. And I think this is so important, especially when it comes to women. We were talking about how these circles nowadays of Muslim suhbas are very judgmental. It's everywhere. And why it's like that? Because we forgot another fundamental, which Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was the most compassionate. Even the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was sending the rules, the harams and halals, it was not immediate. It was step by step, in moderation. It's because there was compassion. There was so much compassion and understanding towards people and the weakness of people. And just because of this openness and willingness to accommodate each one of them,
Islam is so mainstream now. So we have also the role to embody those values and also be like patient with people. So recently I had a girl as well who wants to work with me, and she's like, but by the way, is that okay for you if for some events I'll wear hijab, but for some events I will not? And I'm like, yes, but can I understand why you're doing that? Because it's difficult, blah, blah, blah. But what's your final reason? I really want to wear it, but I want to wear it with my consciousness. I'm like, you're in, you know? So it's more about understanding what your intention is. Like, example, I mean, I don't think she would say that, but let's say if she would say something like, well, you know, this event is about conventional fashion, but this event about modest fashion, that is the reason why.
I hear you.
I would probably say, maybe you better clarify what are your intentions. And once you clarify it, let's talk about it again, right?
Yeah. And I think that's where Ramia's expertise comes into, because when we live in a non-Muslim country and we are ruled by laws, legislations that are not aligned with Islamic values, especially in DV, it's a predicament, because, you know, unfortunately, like a lot of people that we work with through my charity, they're not married under Islamic law. They have, sorry, my apologies. They're not married under Australian law.
Okay.
They're married under Islamic law, but the man does not allow the rights for the woman under the Islamic law. But at least if they were under the Australian law, the government could pursue the right that the man has forfeited because he's not practicing his Islam correctly. And I think that's a big struggle too, living in a country that is not in alignment with Islamic jurisprudence, and then kind of going, you know, what, you know, kind of having your own take on it, and then understanding, you know, even like it always, you know, tax in Australia is like 42%, 35%. Like we give half our income back to the
Double
government.
tax, because we pay zakat too. So.
You're right. But zakat is 2.5%. And I'm like, God is so merciful. Like, and this is where we find the fine line between even our charity in time, right? Ramia, kind of going, if our religion was all about self-compromise and self-sacrifice, because our Muslim women tend to be very self-sacrificial, then why, and this is where the logic comes in, right? Then why is charity only 2.5%? Why doesn't God say to me, why doesn't Allah oblige me to give 42% of my, right? So again, this is where the intellect comes in, and you kind of go, I might not be a scholar in Islam, but if zakat is 2.5, it makes a lot of sense that it's all right that I'm only giving 2.5. If I give more, good on me. There's a lot of stuff in the Quran, right, that says you'll get even more and so on and so forth. And then you look at your level of self-sacrifice where you lose yourself because you give to, I know people who do so much for others and nothing for their family. And people look at them in the community and go, what a pious human being. But their family is suffering because they're absent. They're not there for their wives. They're not raising their children, but they love to fill the void with the clap of others that are putting them on a pedestal because of how good they are. And I suppose it always comes down to the same thing. If you actually, and this is what, when you said, Guzelya, there are some benefits of culture and tradition. I find that really hard to believe. I think that culture and tradition, the vast majority of the problems we have in society is because we've opted for the cultural practices and the tradition of our part of the world over the tradition of Islam. And as a result of that, it's taken away a lot from us. And for example, in Islam, it's 7, 14, 21. We know about by 7 or 8, I was saying before, prefrontal cortex is somewhat developed. So a child needs to know, like my daughter's 8 and there are certain brands that she will boycott at our own discretion. May Allah love her forever. And I have friends who judge me and say, like, you're so harsh. And I said, actually, you are, because you're not giving your child any ability of emotional intelligence. What am I going to leave her when I go? A house and a car and some money in the bank? I'm going to leave her the real understanding of what is expected from her in this passing 3-dimensional realm. And you're taking away from that child their ability to build emotional resilience by allowing them to still watch cartoons past the age of 7, 8. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that, but I'm sorry, as 18-year-old VC students, we shouldn't need to be watching, what's that emoji movie?
Emoji.
No, not emoji. What's the other one?
Know.
Does anyone know in the audience?
My kids are older.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah,
the second part of Inside Out, one of the audience is like, we're not allowed to breathe, but I'll just say it. Inside Out, like one of my friends who's a principal at a public school, she's like, it's so good. We're teaching our 17-year-olds emotional. And I'm like, Wow. And with a cartoon. And whilst I appreciate the simplicity, I also want to bring us back to understanding that by that age, they shouldn't need that.
Yeah.
Right?
Just to build on all of this, I think, you know, if we unpack Islam in terms of the core ethos, the center, the principles that are centered around Islam, it's ibadat and muamalat, right? So it's not only a relationship with the creator, Allah Azza wa Jal. It's also that relationship with the creation.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And this is where again we lack. I mean, you were mentioning, Guzelya, that you know, when I go out, set out to do certain things and so forth, yes, intention's critical. Intention guides absolutely everything that I do, even in my interactions with people. But because we've become such a self-centered society, you know, it's all about me, my family, and that's it.
Which is the Western model. Sorry, it's not the Islamic model.
You know, even this notion of يَأْمَرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, you know, enjoining good, forbidding evil. Nobody wants to engage in that either, because I don't want to burn that bridge. I want to be, you know, I want to maintain the ties and so forth. So if you want to respectfully, with hikmah and wisdom, allude or alert someone that, look, what you're doing is maybe incorrect, you question yourself twice. Because it may, you know, so intention's critical, because ultimately, if you set about your ordinary life with the right intention, even in your dealings with people, whatever the result is not in your hands. Right. And again, when we talk about judgment of the work that we do and so forth, the effort is what matters. It's not the result.
So
it's the journey.
You know, it's the effort. So, you know,
but we're a cancel culture, aren't we?
Absolutely. So
even on socials.
Muamalat, civil interactions, if you expand on that, it starts off first and foremost, that interaction with yourself. How do I treat myself? How do I respect myself? What level of compassion, mercy do I have to myself? That's the first. Then it is with those closest to you, your husband, your father, your mother, your children.
By circle.
Then ultimately your community and then your society. And going back to your point, there are people that commit charity of time and wealth and so forth outside, but they're not doing it within their homes. So that's problematic. And this is why slowly you're seeing a crumbling of our ummah, because we have prioritized the wrong circles.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So,
or the order. The
the order
is not right
but more importantly, muamalat. And I think all of this is beautifully sort of demonstrated in the best of months yet to come, being Ramadan. The things you're talking about, in that, you know, the stomach and the discipline that we give ourselves over our stomach, what that allows us to do, we experience that in Ramadan.
And before we talk about Ramadan, we're going to take a break. Find us on the part 2.
It's a good segue.
So this was very please don't forget your point.
I won't forget it.